Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're going to wrap up our talk about cyclists and these things here in just a second, but we're talking about primary and secondary offenses. And in Iowa, there are a lot of traffic offenses that you can commit. I see this a lot. I see the effects of if you get pulled over and you've been drinking, what that can do. But a primary offense is something that the officer can pull you over for just by committing it on its own. That'd be speeding, not wearing your seatbelt, swerving in the lanes, reckless driving, having your rear license plate lamp not being properly illuminated, having a back tail light out. There's a list of things that you can get pulled over for, and it's just like any other crime. There has to be probable cause. The officer basically sees you do it, pulls you over, gives you a ticket, or gives you a warning. Secondary offense is something, and actually seatbelt might be a secondary now that I think about it. It is, yeah. Secondary offense is when they stop you for a primary, so you're speeding and they come on you and say, oh, you weren't wearing your seatbelt. They can give you a ticket for that. But if you're driving down the road, and texting is one of these secondary offenses. You're driving down the road and you're texting and the officer sees you, and I'm sure a lot of you folks, including this guy right here, have seen this happen where you're texting on your phone or you're checking like a map or doing something with your phone. Your eyes are just briefly off the road. Leave me trying to adjust my behavior. You should sanction me for that, legislator. I would appreciate it. Your eyes are briefly off the road and you pass an officer, and you don't get pulled over, and you're thinking, well, I thought this is illegal. It's because it's a secondary offense. Your driving is not doing something that you can get pulled over for. So, Jake, about what is the legislative rationale between a secondary and a primary offense, as you understand it anyway?
The way I understand it is very simple. It's just secondary offense, obviously, yes, these are laws, but we want to enforce them, but this is not the number one issue. Drinking and driving, we'd all agree is an offense we don't want to commit. Everything else, that's a first degree offense, and that you can get in big trouble for that. But not wearing a seatbelt, it only affects you, I would say. And so that's kind of a way. Also, when it comes to seatbelts, secondary offense, also text, that could make an argument either way. But right now, it's secondary offense, and we believe that there's worse penalties to be crime. And so if you want to look into that issue, we could, but also have to remind you that I don't think it's the same as drinking and driving either. It's
a tough call because there have been lots of studies, there have been lots of reports and documentaries done, and lots of Journalist Inc. spilled about how texting is just as bad. But I agree with you. There's this distinction in my brain that I just can't help but feel that you're doing something worse. You're doing something more morally worse by intentionally getting drunk and then intentionally getting behind the wheel of a car, than which you are incapable of driving in a safe way, than if you're texting where you're a little bit more capable, I think.
And let me tell you about the limbo area. So I drive all over, as you probably imagine. Coming down from I watched my parents' dog drop it off this morning out in Cumming, Iowa. Had an errand, had a meeting here. Well, I'm like, fastest way to get to the studio today. I pull my Google phones up. Is that texting and driving? I'm just trying to get my MapQuest and set my phone up there so it talks to me.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely right. Well, and also, if you can read the message. So you can read a message that you get, which is a brief distraction, and then it's the and it is more distracting to actually sit there and text, and I certainly am guilty of it, and I chastise myself every time. But I think that I think that that's probably where we can leave that conversation there. We all know that it's not the best thing to do, but it's certainly not as bad as drinking and driving, in my opinion. So Jake, last words on the RAGBRAI issue, or on the cyclist issue. Doc wanted me to ask specifically, is there anything legislatively that can be done to correct this that you think?
I don't think so. I think it's an awareness campaign. I think it's Doc won't like this. Good thing he's not here. But I'm okay with bike trails. I think it's I'm in favor of communities getting involved. I don't think it's a federal or state issue.
Oh, yeah, of course not.
Yeah, but I think if communities get involved, that's their decision to get involved with that. I think people in Johnson were begging for the bike lane in Northwest Beaver. Just for safety, because they don't want to be on the road either. I mean, you've been on Beaver, that's a train wreck. So again, that's one of those things that we wish that we had, and it's safer now. So going that route, bike awareness, and I think biking's getting a lot bigger. Over the last 5-6 years, maybe I was just getting older, but I feel like
it's a huge popular activity now.
It's popular activity, and it's taken over running. People are like, "Oh, this kind of hurts." Like, well, got to ride my bike, and so I think it's going that way out. And I think that bringing awareness to anything the first time we do it is people aren't always seeing bikes. So hopefully, and with the busy metro around here, we'll figure something out.
Well, it's just getting busier, and I think I'm going to echo those comments to the extent that. We had an awareness campaign, I believe, in the 70s and 80s, and motorcycles became a little more popular. That can't always see a motorcycle. It's a similar kind of thing. Bikes are more vulnerable, obviously, but they can be just as invisible. They can hide in that blind spot. And so I think maybe if the legislature was going to if we're going to commit any public money to this whatsoever, maybe it could be public money directed towards a broad statewide awareness campaign of look for the bike. Slow down if you need to. Pay attention. Make sure that that person who is on the road with you, that you are sharing it adequately. What I'm hearing from both sides, this resentment from both sides is not helpful. This idea that these cars are out to kill you is not helpful, and this idea that these bicyclists are just a nuisance, that's not helpful either. So I think that if we were able to just sort of put those concerns aside, have a statewide awareness campaign, I think that's going to be more effective than any kind of law we could pass.
I agree with you.
So we're in agreement here. So here's the next thing we're going to talk about. We're going to just kind of do a very brief wrap up of the RNC. It was last week, but there are a couple of highlights that we did not get to talk about. Doc and I didn't get to talk about because they happened afterwards. Ted Cruz's speech, and which was just, I've got some specific thoughts. I'm going to let Jake talk about Ted Cruz's speech here, and also it's kind of like the tone of the entire event. And Trump's speech in particular, I thought were interesting. We'll make those kinds of arguments, I guess, or maybe we'll have some comments and thoughts on that. I certainly have had a lot to think about Donald Trump in the last couple of days, especially how the vaunted 538 election forecast has them almost neck and neck at this point. And as this Hillary Clinton supporters getting more and more scared of a Trump presidency, I don't know quite what to do. I hope convention bounces are real, and I hope they're lasting. I'll tell you that. But we're going to get back to that here after a second. We're going to take another quick break. Please remember our sponsors. They would love to hear from you. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out on docandlefty.com. We write we write occasionally, and there's some good stuff there that you can look back into in the archives. It's a historical document I'm sure people will enjoy. So please stick around. We'll be back right after